more to marketing. Welcome to More to Marketing, the podcast that explores marketing, product, and everything business. I'm your host today, Susan Walsh, and today we're going to go and dive into a really interesting topic, which is what makes great products great. And I have a very special guest today. I have an acclaimed author, Jeff Callan, who has written the book, What Makes Great Products Great? Jeff has a proven track record of bringing innovation to life, and he does this through his ideas, and they have helped products for over millions upon millions of customers. Over the years, Jeff has accumulated a huge wealth of knowledge to enable him to create award-winning business strategies and business plans. Welcome, Jeff. Tell me a bit more about you and your background.
Hey, Susan, thank you. Yes. So I've been working in product management for about 25 years, which means basically I have 50,000 hours of PM experience. I've worked with everyone from pre-seed startups to Fortune 100 companies. In 2017, I left a 20-year career at the mobile carrier here in the US, Sprint, which is now part of T-Mobile, and started my own company, Tightwire, doing product management consulting, working with companies to build and scale their products. During my career, I've taken multiple products from ideation to scale. I've generated more than $1 billion in bottom line value for the partners that I work with. And I usually tell people that I am comfortable taking ideas from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 10x. Last year, I published my book, What Makes Great Products Great, and I took those 50,000 hours of experience and distilled it down to 400 pages of product management cheat codes. As far as from a personal standpoint, I live in Overland Park, Kansas, with my wife, Lori. She's a college professor, and my two cats, Reggie and Miles. I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big fan of live music. I've been running an internet radio station called Musical Justice since the year 2000.
Definitely been around for quite a long time in the product space and also getting involved in many different things there too. Thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing. And I think one of the biggest compliments I can give you is when I used to work for a telco, we used to watch what you were doing at your telco because they had such great innovative ideas in the market and we're really trying to push boundaries. So I'm
Thank you.
I'm very well aware of your work, which is why I'm so excited to have you here today and also been talking to you for a while now too outside of here. But let's talk more about your book and all those hours of time you distilled, which couldn't have been easy. So, what did inspire you to write your book, What Makes Great Products Great?
Well, I had a college roommate, Mark Weingardner, who was a New York Times best-selling author. My wife, as an academic, has published 6 books of her own. And so you get to a certain point in your career when you start to think about things like legacy. When I
Mm.
started my consulting business, I've been doing a lot of coaching, and that's really a tough thing to scale. So they say write what you know, and I took those 50,000 hours of product experience and tried to turn them into a scalable knowledge product, a book.
Mm.
So
I think the biggest thing about this book for me is really about how versatile it is. Do you want to talk about how you came about the structure you did for this book and why?
well, yeah, it was one of those things. I work a lot with early stage startups. So I think there's really 3 different types of reader who would be interested in what's in the book. If they're an aspiring product manager, and maybe they'd like to learn, but they don't really have the luxury of the time to get a bunch of experience, they can learn from my mistakes, my successes. If they're a more experienced product manager or product leader, um, basically, you know, sometimes you get into this cycle where you're missing your metrics, you're missing your deadlines, you never have enough resources, you have unrealistic timelines. I think good to have a book to refer back to that's been through the war with you and to be able to maybe confirm some things that you've experienced. And then there's a third tier, which is executives who maybe aren't product people, but they have a sense that something's going on in that area of the business, and they want to understand that role better. They want to get insight into the role. And so those are really the three target audiences, I think, for the book.
Mm. I think one of the things that I love about the book as well is there's so many lists in there that you can just pick up, and whatever stage you're at in the product life cycle, where if you're in the ideate phase or you're further down, you want to actually launch something, there's there's sections within the book that can help you along the way. Like one of my favorites is the go to market section, where a lot of product people may fail to see the relationship they need to have with marketing to help get their product out there for the right messaging. I think just having all of those tips and tricks, your experience all rolled up into this great book really do help.
It's one of my favorite chapters because it's actually based on stuff that I've done in the real world. There's a 58-point checklist, a go-to-marketing checklist that has a whole bunch of different categories of ideas and things that you need to, maybe they don't need to be done for every product, but you should at least pause for a second, think about, consider it, and then maybe you don't need a sales contract for this particular product launch because you're doing it as an online sale. But you should at least consider whether you need these things before you just dismiss them. So I think having a checklist gives you a more consistent product launch. It allows you to capture things that maybe screwed up a previous product launch, so
Mm,
you don't make the same mistake over and over again.
exactly. And that's why it's just a handy resource. Now, let's go into one of my favorite questions I've wanted to ask you is, how do you believe the concept of great products has evolved over time? And what role does innovation play in maintaining the relevance in today's market?
That's a really interesting question. In many ways, it hasn't changed that much. Great products engage us, they deliver value in pleasing ways to us. But if there was one way that it really has changed, I think significantly, it's data. We know so much more about our customers, especially if you're selling a connected digital product. We can know when they use it, we know where they use it, we know how they use it, what parts of it they use it, we know when they stop using it. We have so many opportunities to create feedback loops and leverage that to improve the user's experience. There's an entire chapter in the book about data and understanding how to create narratives using the product's data so that you can use product data to drive decisions, to drive strategies, to drive tactics within your organization. There's a downside to how products have evolved. And I think one of the big ones is that attention spans have gotten much, much shorter. The white noise that we deal with in our everyday lives can sometimes be deafening. Um, there are so many options out there to choose from. With generative AI, it's getting easier and easier to create, and that's adding to the white noise in people's lives. How do you break through that noise? How do you engage and deliver value in a distracted world? I mean, those are some questions that I think are real challenges for product people.
Agree. And I think a lot of them, when it comes to data as well, is how do I use this data? How do I actually merge it together, use it to actually get something meaningful to create insights and maybe change out of and do some pivot points wherever it is with the product? I think there's a lot of gaps in some skills or the right people to bring in to be able to find that out for you to help you along that journey.
Right. That's definitely true. You have uh, every product has raw data that they collect, and you need someone who's going to add some structure to that data. It's usually an analyst or a data scientist that's adding structure to the information, taking it from that raw data stage into something that is just more structured information. Product manager comes in, I think, at the next step, which is taking that information and converting it into insights by adding context, adding business knowledge. You know, if you go to a lot of data scientists and they'll tell you when this went up, this went down, and then you ask the next logical question, which is why. And they're like, I don't know. I'm only trained to know when this goes up, this goes down.
Mm.
you have to talk to stakeholders. You have to talk to business owners in order to understand the context that helps you take that information, turn it into insights that you can then use to evolve into strategies and tactics. The execution of those tactics turns into new signals that come into the front end of the model, and it's just a big loop.
Mm. I think one of the biggest distractions that I see happen quite a lot is you have a senior stakeholder who believes they are the target audience of this product or service, and they don't listen to the data. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, having seen that happen over and over again. And you're laughing at me because you've probably seen it too.
Seen it too.
In those instances, is there anything that you can recommend for product owners and people to be able to push through the right data to be able to get through to those senior stakeholders that are just so stuck in their own mindset?
Well, one of the one of the things that you have to do is stand by the data. Um, it's it's not always easy when you have a senior leader who is a data denier.
Mm.
Um, but one of the big issues really is um, you have this data. If they're going to deny the data, then ultimately you're going to end up wanting to, or end up having to do what they want to do, or you're going to have to leverage the data to convince them to give your ideas a try. It's a sticky situation for any
Mm.
product person.
It definitely is. And I think sometimes it's one of those ones where you have to just ride the wave, go with where unfortunately you know where it's probably going to end up going, but have a pivot plan so that as soon as the first round of data comes in to prove you're right and they're wrong, which is one of my favorite things, then you can quickly pivot as fast as possible to be right on track.
So do you in Australia, do they have the show Mythbusters?
Yes, when it was around, yes.
Um, Adam Savage is one of my favorite follows, and he has a YouTube channel. And about sometime within the last month, he had posted a video, and the audience asked him a question, and the question basically was about the relationship he had with his co-host Jamie Heidemann. And he said that they had a very contrarian, if one said black, one said white, and this was literally the story. They were trying to shoot something. They needed something that would reflect light. Adam suggested a white mesh. Jamie said, I say we should use a black mesh. And Adam realized that the world was going to answer this question for him. He didn't need to prove Jamie wrong because the world was going to prove him wrong. So they went ahead and they got the black mesh. He didn't have the argument. The world proved Jamie wrong,
Mm.
and they went on with the white mesh and continued on with the project. Sometimes with senior leaders, that's what you end up having to do. Let the world prove them wrong. Don't take it on as a fight because you may not have the political capital organizationally to do it anyway. And so just let the world prove it wrong.
I love that example. It's definitely a really good way to look at it, that it wasn't going to end and there was still time within their time schedule as well to be able to amend for it too, but not taking anything to heart. And I can see a lot of product people sometimes will do that because their heart and soul is in what they're delivering and creating. So it's another great tip as well to be able to step back and look at it just rationally and go, let's make sure we can try and put some time into this to do this test if we need to, or whatever it might be, so that they don't feel that it's a reflection on them, but they do have a backup plan for when they know inevitably in that example it was not going to work.
Right.
Fantastic. Now, there's a whole pile of different insights, chapters, sections within your book. Can you share a few of your favorite principles that you cover within it?
Well, one of my favorites is the opening story. Um, Basically, we talk about the fact that products are everywhere you look, and I'm going to ruin life for some people who don't see it this way. Because once you have the veil taken away from your eyes and see the world the way I see it, you won't be able to see it another way. So let me explain what I'm talking about. In the room where our listeners are, there's probably a light switch. Someone had to make product decisions for that light switch. Is it a single up and down switch? Is it two? Is it a two plus a slider, two plus a swivel? Is it white plastic, brushed metal, wood, Mickey Mouse? I mean, there's all sorts of different things just for a simple light switch, so that when you go into your local hardware store and you're looking at a wall full of options, that the option that you're looking for that meets your needs is there. When you go out and look at your yard, the grass in your yard was originally probably a contractor grade seed. Grass is a product. If you don't believe grass is a product, go to a golf course and ask them if they think grass is a product, because they have rough grass, they have grass for the greens, they have grass for the fairways. Three different types of grass in on one golf course, more, probably even more. So the idea that products are everywhere you look, when I go to a concert, I mentioned that I like music. When I go to a concert, I not only experience the music, but I experience it as a series of product decisions. You know, you go to an EDM show and there's lights ablaze, bright colors all over. You go to that same concert venue and see Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and everybody's wearing black. It's starkly lit, and the focus is on the boss. And so everywhere you look, people are making decisions about your experience, your product, how they're going to craft that experience. It's everywhere. That's
Yeah, no, exactly. You're 100% right. It really is. I actually have another analogy that I what kind of analogy that I kind of do with my team, and that is marketing is everywhere. So I literally took one of my team members out and I was just showing how even a simple sign to go to the train station has all these elements within it that's helped make the decision for what that sign looks like. Um, and I do this exercise quite regularly with them. They probably tear their hair out a bit with me when we go to the shops to pick up some like fruit or something. But I find it's a really interesting exercise to do, to see the evolution over time as well with some of those decisions that are made. And that's I've been coming from more from a product, sorry, a marketing lens, where you're now talking about from a product decision making about all those little pieces with it. So I absolutely love that.
another thing that I talk about in the book that I think people would find interesting. I've worked with a lot of cutting edge technology over the years, and I've ended up burning a lot of resources on products that were really ahead of their time because or suffered from the fact that the tech wasn't fully baked. For example, I used predictive speech to text platforms 20 years ago that have evolved to what we know today as LLMs. But 20 years ago, they weren't ready to do the things we wanted to do with them. So knowing that as a concept, I came up with, and I talk about in my book, something called the Wow Now matrix. The Wow Now matrix is a 2 by 2 matrix with the wow factor on one axis and the now factor on the other axis. And basically, I define wow as the concept's innovation value, or the concept's value in general. I define now as how quickly it can be delivered. Does the tech exist in a working form today? Does it require some R&D and tech advances to be useful? Does it require a lot of resources to develop, or is it a quick build? And so you put that on a high, low basis, and then you have, what you're really looking for is high wow, high now factor, which is what
Mm.
I call the build quadrant in the model. You have low wow, high now factor, which is we'll consider it because maybe the wow factor can be elevated, but it's ready to go now. Then you have the high wow factor, but the low now factor. So high wow, low now, which is basically means we've got to learn more. We have to develop this, maybe invest more in the technology. And then you've got the bottom quadrant, which is low wow, low now. And you just park those ideas. Maybe they change over time. Maybe something comes which will shift it into one of the other quadrants. But for now, it's a park. And I think using that lens to evaluate cutting edge technology and products that you can build with it is a pretty useful way of deciding, are we really ready to go with this or not? And I wish that I'd understood this concept early in my career when I was doing some of these projects, because there was no way that they were ever going to be successful because the tech just wasn't baked.
Mm. I think it's a great tool and resource also to use in workshops. So if you've got having those big innovative sessions about what are we going to do next, what's the next big product on our roadmap, or how can we improve what we've currently got, having that as the template could definitely help making some of those business decisions and focusing on the resources as well.
Yes, absolutely.
What are some of your key insights when you were doing all your research? What did you discover that was very interesting? Like, are there any common traits or characteristics that you found amongst when there's a successful and an unsuccessful product? What did you learn along the way?
It's a great question. Um, how do you tie together Coke, Apple, Legos, BMW 3 Series? You got sugar water, you've got iPhones, you've got plastic blocks, and a luxury automobile. And there are some basic things that they all deliver value in ways that are pleasing. They deliver value in ways that engage us. But I think one of the most important things that they all do is how they manage the end-to-end customer experience. I talk a lot about this in chapter 24 in the book, The Customer Journey, and understanding that a customer experiences your product on a timeline. They start out with, maybe they figured out that they have a problem. They start to do a little research around it. They narrow the field of possible alternatives down to a handful. They pick one. They go through a purchase, go through an onboarding, go through a first use. Maybe at some point they have an interaction with a support team. They use the product for a period of time. They get to the end of that period. And if it's a product that enables repeat purchases, hopefully they go back to the purchase part of that timeline and not back through to reevaluate and so on, because you've built loyalty over that. Well, if you think about how that's how the customer experience is on a timeline, but if you think about how the uh, most companies organize things, they organize in silos. So the marketing team is going to handle that early discovery and communication piece. And then you're going to have maybe a product team that focuses on delivery of the product. And then you've got support teams and loyalty teams and all these different groups, but they're each kind of handling their own silo of work and then tossing the customer over the wall to the next team. And it creates a very disjointed, fragmented experience for the customer. Well, I think that the best product companies, the best products, have that as a common thing where you can see that there's this consistency of experience as you move through
Mm.
from stage to stage, from touch point to touch point in the experience. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does completely. And I think I've got an example I can add to this that you can talk through. So, Tesla, the brand, the man behind it, innovative. Everyone thinks major quality, that it's ahead of its time in some ways, that very forward thinking, very futuristic, looking at how to use energy in a different way for a car vehicle. Now, and you got a price tag on this as well. So we're talking towards luxury end here. We're not talking bargain basement car. So there are a lot of expectations then when you think of what you're going to get, not just as the car, but as the experience that goes with the car. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, sorry to burst bubbles, Elon, but the customer service is not there. You don't get messages about when your vehicle is. It might appear in the app that it's in the middle of the ocean for 6 months. You don't even know it's ready for pickup. Then the service pickup isn't exactly stellar because it's just an assumption you know how to use this new vehicle with new technology and you can just drive off like a normal combustion engine. Where in a lot of cases, you may need a little bit of help to set the settings or whatever it could be. So, again, just an example here of when the silos break. You've got a quality product that's had so much engineering, product research, development, technology advancements put into it. But by throwing it over the brick wall, it's failing when it comes to consumers and really just making the brand as pristine as it should be.
Right. Well, so Elon is uh, an interesting example here because he's, I think, on steroids. One of the problems that I frequently see with early stage startups, which is that the founder is the first product manager. And so if they don't ever evolve from being the first product manager into managing the other aspects of the business, it can be a limit to the company's ability to grow. And that CEO has all sorts of other things that they should be focused on. I mean, the product is the most important investment that a company makes, because if you don't have a good product, you don't have customers, and if you don't have customers, you don't have a business. So I understand wanting to be very hands-on from his perspective, but my guess is he doesn't empower other people, other stakeholders to give him feedback. He um, he reminds me a little bit of an old Twilight Zone episode where there's a little kid, and every time anyone contradicts this little kid who's got superpowers, he makes them basically disappear.
Mm.
And so my thought is that Elon might be a little bit like that. If you give him bad news, he's just going to make you disappear. So he ends up being surrounded by a lot of people who share his vision, but maybe
Mm.
share his blind spots too.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the most important things to understand when you've got those silos and you're trying to break them down and you identify it is not always looking for people that are like-minded, but people who will challenge and people who will see the data and put it forward and, as you said earlier, stand behind it.
Exactly. Diversity of experience creates a range of empathy in the development process. And some of the best teams are also the most diverse teams, and they come together, and there's the sum of their parts is greater than the individual pieces because they bring all this different perspective. You know, it's an interesting conversation to have, the impact of diversity of team on quality of product, quality of experience, empathy for the customer.
Mm.
Um, all of those things are uh, a very significant part of what you get when you have a diverse team.
No, I definitely agree there. And I think that's probably one of the other insights you found along the way, too. So there's always going to be challenges. So how do you address the challenge of staying competitive in a constantly evolving market, particularly when you think of technology and how much has changed just in the last 5 years?
Well, first of all, you've got to do the work to stay informed and to just be knowledgeable about your ecosystem. It's important to understand from a competitive standpoint that there are people out there who are always trying to take it away from you. There are always people who are out there wanting to crush you. You know, they uh, if there are people out there who want to take what you have away from you, crush you, and leave you a broken shell of a human, um, the there's two things that you really need to know. You need to know why are they buying from your competition, and how can you meet that need better.
Mm.
So in the book, I talk about something called I call the four whys, and the four whys are four reasons why a, a customer might purchase from you. The four whys are the functional why, the social why, the emotional why, and the logical why. So let's break each one of them down. The functional why is really table stakes. It's, does this product or service do what you need it to do? If it doesn't meet that basic why, then any of the others are not really relevant. The second why, the social why, is more like, I buy this product because I associate with a group that also buys this product. So think about things like sports teams,
Mm.
if you've got a sports jersey in your closet, if you've got a concert t-shirt in your closet, those are things that you bought because you saw yourself as a person who likes that team, Manchester United or the Rolling Stones. And so you buy to be part of the social group. The third reason is what I call the emotional why. The emotional why is, I buy this thing because it makes me feel a certain way. So take McDonald's, for example. They literally sell a product called a Happy Meal. You buy the Happy Meal because you want to be happy. So then you've got the fourth reason, which is the logical why. The logical why is more increasingly important, because the logical why is, I go to Amazon and I sort on review, or I sort on price, and I'm basically leveraging data to make my decision for me. I'm buying the most highly reviewed, or the most frequently reviewed, or the cheapest, or the most expensive.
Fastest delivery for
Uh,
me.
Fastest delivery. So all of those reasons are reasons why somebody would buy a product. So if you understand your reason, I think it sets you up with being more competitive uh, against people who are trying to take it all away from you. One of the other techniques that I use when I'm working with my teams is what I call a pre-mortem. So a
Mm.
pre-mortem is the idea that, imagine that you and I are having a conversation about the business that you're in now, but we're 5 years in the future and we're looking back and it failed. Having a conversation around, what do we think the reasons are that this business failed? So you start to anticipate potential problems before they occur and make sure you have a plan in place to deal with them. So it almost always uncovers things that are important for that business to deal with. And we very frequently are so focused on what I call the happy path, and convinced that it's all going to fall in line for us, that we ignore the things that could potentially go wrong. You've got to have a plan for it.
100%. I think another document that I do quite a lot myself is also that the risk assessment, the risk of what could go wrong, and then how is it going to be mitigated, and do I have to do something now about it or not? So a bit more on the very negative, but it also helps when I'm working with product people and myself being a product person, of have I created everything I needed to get as close to success as I can do, that I feel confident.
Right. So that reminds me of a story that I frequently tell to the startups that I work with. It's the idea that when you're creating a prototype, you want to create the prototype such that it answers the most high risk questions that you, or the the uh, the areas that you're most concerned might fail. Again, like we talked about earlier with the pre-mortem technique. when you're building this prototype, the analogy that I use is imagine that your product is, we're going to teach gorillas to juggle flaming swords while they balance on a pedestal. If that's your product, don't start with how do we build a pedestal, because most people know how to build a pedestal. You want to test, can we teach gorillas to juggle, and what's going to be their appetite for juggling a flaming sword before we even start thinking about the pedestal. But most companies most frequently will jump in and try and build the pedestal first because they're like, I know how to build a pedestal. And they feel like they're making progress because they built the pedestal, and they're leaving that hard stuff for later, and they'll just sort it out when the time comes.
Mm.
Don't do that. Figure out if you can teach the gorillas to juggle the flaming swords. The pedestal will be there.
I've got a boring one in comparison to that. Mine's more about you're delivering a service product, and and some people are just so fixated on the bells and whistles of it. Yes, I could do a referral program. Yes, we'll give them all points each, but they forget to think about the product rules. How will the rules work? Is it actually possible with the technology that you have, or do you need a new tech stack with it? That's a fabulous idea that you want to do a referral program, but in actual fact, how? And then that would then lead to going, okay, what can I tell the marketing people that the product can do for them to write their fluffy marketing message about? Because
That's a perfect example.
there's so many times that fails.
Absolutely.
Oh, the joys of technology. What excites you the most about product? You've been doing it for so long, but what excites you the very most?
Every day you wake up as a PM, you wake up and you say, how can we make this experience better? There's always something new. There's always a new challenge, a new problem to solve. And if you're like me and you get bored easily, that's a good thing. So to have a new challenge in front of you. Simon Sinek wrote a book called The Infinite Game, and he talks about the idea that the infinite game is a game that has no rules, has no clock. That's what we are really living in most of the time. Like I said earlier, a company's investment in their product is one of the most important investments that they can make. And so you're working with this important investment. There are new rules, there are no clock. There's you can't just hold on to the ball and wait for the clock to run out. You've got to do something. So having the idea that you're always going to have something new to work on, something new to fix, something you're always going to take it one notch closer to a perfect experience and never get there. Um, that to me is the amazing opportunity that comes with being a product manager.
Mm. And I'll probably say some of it also for you would be now that technology is caught up to where your thinking may have been 20, 10, 5 years ago, they can actually start seeing some things eventuate as well.
Well, absolutely, absolutely, and that is a major part of excitement. One of the early products that I built when I was at Sprint uh, was before there was even a Wi-Fi standard to build a networking product. We were doing service distribution inside the home, and we had to go in and wire everything with Ethernet. Now, a lot of the listeners may not even know what Ethernet is these days because we don't use it anymore. But it was basically a wired data connection that we had to distribute the data around the house. Um, so being able to have wireless solutions was a big step forward. The stuff that we're doing now with generative AI, that's what my next book is going to be about. The idea of what's the impact of AI in the workplace, and how are we going to manage that over time. So
Mm.
definitely interested in that.
Fantastic. Can't wait to see when that one lands. Then you'll have two books catching up to
Too.
your wife.
She's going to still smoke me, but yes.
Now, I ask this question of everybody. What brand, any brand in the world, best represents you and why?
That's a really interesting question. And I'm probably going to give you an answer like you haven't heard before because I'm picking a band, and the band is U2.
Mm-hmm.
U2 is a global brand. They're very innovative. They have a lot of integrity. It's art, but it's focused on customer experience. They had the big 360 tour stadiums, but they were trying to make a stadium experience very intimate. They recently did the Sphere in Vegas. So they're always using cutting edge technology. They had a big fail at one point because they put their album on all the iPods and everybody got pissed off at them because they didn't want to have their record on their iPod. So they're willing to take chances and they're willing to try to um, deliver with integrity.
Mm-hmm. One question I have to ask back: do you know if they're cat lovers or not?
I do not know if they're cat lovers. I have to think that the Edge is a cat lover.
Then it's a very good pick for you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for your time as well. We've learned so much. And really, it's all about grabbing a hold of that book. What makes great products great? There's 50,000 hours distilled into this book to really make it a juicy source to go to, no matter who you are, what level you are, to be able to learn more about product and how to make it the most successful it can be. If you go through some simple principles and some more complicated ones as well, with all different avenues that you can look at, pick up, and go back to over and over again. But product is all about engaging and having a value. And then how do you make sure that it always stays relevant along the way? Change is inevitable, and that's where data can help you. So never be afraid to use and utilize data to strengthen opinions, to get things changing and moving along the way, because the data will show what's working and what isn't, where there's some gaps. So make sure that you're working with some people that understand data and can pull out those insights for you if you're not necessarily a specialist in data. Definitely look at how products are within your landscape. They are everywhere and anywhere. Everything you're doing, even what you're listening to right now, is a product and had decisions made in it for whatever color it is, the sound quality, all those different pieces was all part of a story to create a product. So, what is your product story? How does it fit in? And how will it be used by your audience? Whole pile of different things Jeff shared from his book, the Wow Now matrix, which is a 2x2 matrix. I'm definitely in love with the quadrant called build because that means that it's really hot right now. Everyone's really excited, and there's technology that can support it. Use this type of concept like the Wow Now when you're doing your workshops with your teams to help identify the low hanging fruit. And then the next ones that are going to come along that you should continually to re-review over time to see when they make sense to put your effort into those. And that's when it's about understanding your audience from your data and also your technology and the ease to create from your team and your resources. It's very important to manage the end-to-end process, including the whole customer journey and being aware of the silos that can happen. Where possible, some of the most successful products out there have been at businesses that have seen that there are silos and done their best to remove them or mitigate them as best they can. So the consumer can see one nice journey that's consistent and also appealing so that they're not getting discouraged along the journey. Because ultimately, people that use your product or service, you want them to be your advocate. Not only do you want them to come back and use you over and over again where possible, but you want them to positively tell their friends. Now, when you are looking at products and the team that you have within your organization or the key stakeholders where you can, diversity can make a difference. More diverse teams can be more successful and have more ideas that perpetuate out of them because they think differently. They've got different ways to approach empathy, different ways to think about product and innovation and the consumer appeal. So don't be afraid to have diverse teams, diverse opinions, because that will ultimately make whatever the product or service is you're creating, innovating, improving better. And that's what everyone wants. They want to have that engaging value going on. And you can only get that by actually understanding and getting behind there and seeing different viewpoints. Now, when it does come to your competitors, they will want to go for you. They'll want what you've got. You want what they've got. It's only natural. So, ways that you can stay ahead in the product game is by understanding who your competitors are, why they want to go after you or why you want to go after them, and how you can go about it. So, there are 4 whys in the book that you can use to help you. And that helps you also understand your product. And further to that, you can then look at things like pre-mortems as well, so that you can really shake your product and service as hard as you can to then come out the other end with the strongest product possible for market. So therefore, you're in the best chance of having success. Anything else you'd like to add, Jeff?
Well, it's been great spending time with you. It's been great spending time with your listeners. I do this to connect with people. So if any of the conversation resonates with the listeners, they should follow me on LinkedIn. They can go to www.whatmakesgreatproductsgreat.com and they can download a free book sample and the templates and diagrams from the book there.
Amazing. And I'll make sure all that's in the show notes for everyone as well. Everyone, don't forget to grab a copy of Jeff's book. It's available on Amazon. What Makes Great Products Great. Keep an eye out for his future book. They'll be coming out very, very soon. I can't give a date yet. He gave us a sneak peek. It's coming. And for everyone else, don't forget to add more to marketing to your playlist so you don't miss out on more future fabulous guests. More to marketing.